Welcome to episode 171 of the Band Hive Podcast. It is time for another episode of the Band Hive Podcast. My name is James Cross, and I help independent artists tour smart. This week, I'm sitting across from the one, the only Matt Hose of Alive in Barcelona, who seems to be having some technical difficulties with his sunglasses. You doing okay there, Matt?
My lens popped out. Now the ultraviolet rays of the sun are going to burn my eyes.
The ultraviolet rays, I like that.
That's what I used to say to people when I sold sunglasses on Warped Tour.
Oh, I know. I've heard every single line you have, and they made me laugh even like the 100th time. Like even the 100th time on the same day.
You got to have a bad sense of humor if you're going to be in 100 degrees every day.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was talking to kids in line at Warped Tour, and like you were nearby, I was just like, oh yeah, that guy's so funny. Like you should stop and listen to him. Like I'm going to stop for a second. Just listen. And then I'd like keep going and talk to them. That was literally though, I would stop and have them appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you, James. The best part about being on Warped Tour was being insane, because that's really what people are there for. It's like the car accident that you drive by on the highway. It's like everybody looks. Nobody wants to see a dead body, but like they do. Like for some reason, they're like, oh, am I going to see something gruesome? Am I going to see something terrible? I remember, what's his name? The guy who used to sell sunglasses all the time.
Was it the Australian?
No, the guy before the Australian. But the guy who had the cart and the fanny pack and like a big sign and megaphone, all that. And he would just like walk around making fun of people. And everybody thought it was hilarious. So everybody would buy his product. He literally said that he had to stop doing Warped Tour because it was like a drug for him. He's like, by the time I get to the end of this season, I just feel like a terrible person because all I've done is like make fun of kids for an entire summer, and all of them have loved it so much that they gave me my money. You know, it's just like, what a weird paradigm. High school is a crazy type of world, and that's really what Warped Tour is.
I'm sure that's where the Bowling for Soup song High School Never Ends comes from. We should ask Jarrett. There was even a prom. There was Warped Tour prom.
Yep, absolutely. I went with Andy from We Came as Romans. I think I still have that picture on my Instagram, but there's an old adage that you stay the same age that you get famous as. So it wouldn't surprise me if, especially a lot of those pop punk bands are, you know, very much so like still high school mentality. 4 Year Strong, still coming out wearing leather jackets every day.
You know, that certainly explains a lot about certain bands who have done not so good things. That's an important topic, but we don't need to go down that road today.
Agreed. Yeah, don't steal stuff while you're on Warped Tour or on any tour. Or just don't steal stuff. That's a better way to live your life.
Don't steal stuff. Don't manipulate people. Don't abuse people. Don't be like Johnny Craig. Let's just put it at that.
And don't talk to underage girls.
I was getting there without saying it. I was having an interesting conversation about that with a friend the other day, which I'm not going to get into the details, but I don't know. For me, it's always been very easy to just be respectful of people. It's mind-boggling that some people don't have that. It's probably that they're like narcissist or lack empathy or something, but I don't know. Anyway, all that said, Matt, you fixed your glasses. You popped that lens back in. How are you doing today? Oh, okay, Leland, pull up Matt's video for this, please, because it is Matt and Andy. Oh, Andy Glassjaw. He's in Glassjaw now?
No. This is maybe he is in Glassjaw now. No, he's still in We Came as Romance. I think his last name is just Glass.
Got it. And he's a Glassjaw fan, I guess. I ask because I'm seeing Glassjaw 4 days after this episode drops.
His name is just Andy Glass. But yeah, this is, I think, San Antonio. That was Warped Tour prom a lot of years ago.
It had to be 2013 or earlier.
It may have been 2013.
So anyway, Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so great. I just went on a 5-minute rant.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well, Matt. Yeah, that was a good rant and a fun little discussion of our history on Warped Tour. We're going to talk about some history. Now, I got to say, I'm excited because we're actually finally recording ahead again. This episode drops on March 7th. Yesterday, I recorded the episode for March 14th. And tomorrow, which is February 9th, I'm actually flying out to Germany for my yearly family visit. And I am stoked. Flying Aer Lingus, so unfortunately they moved the plane named St. Patrick to their UK division, so I'm not going to get to post a picture of it with the Paris song on my story. Paris has a song, St. Patrick, and they're from Boston, where I'm flying out of, so that would have been cool. That's the plane I was on last time when I flew into the pandemic. That was an adventure. But some Aer Lingus A330, which I'm stoked for because the A330 is one of my favorite planes after the A340, which the difference between the two is one has 2 engines and the 340 has 4 engines. And I basically grew up on the A340 with Lufthansa. Anyway, all that nerdy stuff aside, Lufthansa is awesome. The A340 is awesome. Lufthansa is the only airline that still flies the A340. Just putting that out there. Best airline ever for keeping it available. This week, we're going to talk about the At Venue 2022 merch report. Because guess what? Merch is big money. And Matt, the first thing I'm seeing here on this report is that in 2019, the average per head at shows was $5.54. And I like that number. $5.54 is a good number because, nerding out again, the plane I did most of my training in is Cessna 11554. Or if you're talking to ATC, you just say Cessna 554. So I like that number. 2020, no data because 2020. 2021, that average per head skyrocketed to $847. And for 2022, it's down a little bit. It's down to $816. That is 47% more than it was before the pandemic. So artists are making more money on merch per head than they were prior to the pandemic. That is fantastic. Now, At Venue, in case you don't know, is a merch selling app. And they track all of the sales that come through their app, which is really handy. Now, Matt, do you use At Venue for Alive in Barcelona, or do you use something else?
We use At Venue for reporting.
It's absolutely the industry standard. I love At Venue, but it's like $50 or $60 a month. So if you're not consistently touring, consistently making money, look at other options. My go-to, if you're just playing like 1 or 2 gigs a month, would be MerchCat. It's, I think, like $11 a month. It's great. Fans can pre-order merch to pick up at the show, like prepay and pre-order, which is absolutely amazing. And it's really great if you're not actively on the road. If you're actively on the road, you probably want to go with At Venue. Now, At Venue, this report covers shows from tiny bar shows all the way up to the biggest of arenas. So that average per head of $8.16 is a very wide spectrum. And you'll also see that it is quite skewed when we get there. But first, I want to jump in and say the average number of items purchased per show is 586, and that average total gross merch sales per show is 20,778. The genre with the most shows, though, is country, which I find interesting, and their average show attendance is 2,652, which is quite large. If you think about like a large club, you're probably not going to see a club bigger than 3,000 or so. A large club is anywhere from, let's say, like 1,200 to 3,000. A medium club is like 7 to 12, and these are rough numbers, and a small club is like 5 and below. So 2,652, those are big shows. But if we take this 20,778 and divide it by 2,652, our average per head should have been 816, but it comes out to 783. I guess interesting. Something doesn't add up there. I'm sure I'm just not doing the math quite right or quite the same way as they do in their report.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's probably some hidden metric, but it is also interesting. You'll notice that it says the genre with the most shows is country, and yet when you actually look at the breakdown, country is not even on the list as far as average dollar per head. It's not even there. Same with the average gross sales by show. And so it's very interesting to see that country is playing the most shows, but they are still not even considered amongst the top. Now, I think this is probably metrics that have to do specifically with show sales exclusively while touring and not anything to do with pre-orders, your pre-sales, your VIP tickets, and anything like that. This is purely your gross income from guarantees and merch sales. So you have to look at all this through that lens. For anybody that doesn't use At Venue or look through this stuff, you definitely should, because there's a lot of really fascinating metrics that you can glean.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll link to the full report in the show notes, which you can find at bandhive.rocks/171. And just a note, Matt, guarantees aren't in this either. It's just the merch sales from shows. So looking at that top 15 list you mentioned, I just want to give a shout out to hard rock, metal, rock, and punk. Oh, and alternative. Because on the top 15, hard rock is 3, metal is 4, alternative is 5, rock is 7, 8, 9, 10, and punk is 11. And indie rock is 12. So like all my favorite genres are in the top 12. And punk is still getting a per head of $8.30, which is above the average. Rock is at $8.88. Oh, wow, wait, they differentiate metal and heavy metal on here too. So heavy metal is number 10, right above punk, $8.38. Regular metal, whatever that is, maybe they mean like old school metal, is $9.76. Alternative is $9.74. Hard rock $10.73. But guess what, Matt? If you didn't already know the answer, what would you guess is the number one per head genre? And knowing that number two is $11.34, what's number one's per head?
If I had to guess, without me looking directly at this report and knowing, I would have guessed rap. To be honest, rap or EDM, because EDM shows are just so drastically expensive. But now, specifically through the guise of merch, I do feel as though underground music lovers in general are much more so the type of people who spend money. It doesn't really surprise me that your metals and your punks make as much money as they do, because the people that are going to metal and punk shows are people that really love music and took the time to find these new bands and like identify with them. But I would have said like rap, just because, rap is culturally popular. It has been culturally popular for a very long time. And on top of that, they're always thinking about spending lots of money. Their merch costs more money than everybody else's does. So just de facto, by the price tag, I would have said rap.
And they are number two, to be fair. Rap is number two. EDM is number 13. That's kind of a shocker to me. I would have expected them to be up there too.
But that's because the price of the tickets are so expensive.
Yeah, that's fair. High production.
Yeah, exactly. They need to have high guarantees because they're having an entire day of lighting set up, and LDMs come in and freaking production managers and whole crews. When we played the Masquerade upstairs, I can't even remember who was playing, but they had a semi-truck come in to install the lights. It was a semi-truck full of lights, just lights. It was awesome. And we got to go and watch a couple of the songs up there. We were playing in the middle floor and they were up on the top. But the amount of production quality that goes into EDM is mind-numbing.
Isn't the Masquerade also the one with the outdoors freight elevator?
They were closing it, and it's an iconic heaven, hell, and purgatory. There's 3 different venues there. The upstairs is heaven. And I think there is an exterior freight elevator. Now that you're saying that, it does sound ominously familiar.
Loading in an entire semi's worth of lights on a freight elevator outside.
Dude, you should have seen the thing. It was crazy. I've never seen so much lighting in my life. Packed to the brim.
Well, so thank you for those guesses, Matt, though you didn't know the answer at all because you weren't looking right at it. The number one genre per head is K-pop. $27.25 per head is their average. That is insane. And it comes down to marketing. And I did a little rant about that before we got on the episode. But the average gross sales by show is also, for K-pop, 133,353. Second place is rap, 49,407. So that's almost 3 times. That's like 2.7 times the second place. Then pop is 44,000, hard rock at 33,000, going down quick. R&B 24, comedy at 23, outselling rock also at 23. So that's 23,902 versus 23,750. Then we see country at 20,000 on average gross sales per show, and it trails off from there. Punk is not on the average gross sales top 15, which is not surprising because punk shows tend to be smaller, and average gross sales, clearly the biggest shows are going to do better. Percentage of attendees who buy merchandise broken down by genre. Guess who's winning? K-pop at 31%. Number 2 is hip-hop and rap, 24%. Heavy metal, 22%. Pop at 20%. Alternative at 19%. Indie, 19%. Rock, 18%. Metal, the not heavy metal, 18%. Bluegrass, 18%. Latin, 17%. Punk, 16%. Comedy, 15%. Hard rock, 15%. Country, 13%. And electronic, 13%. Okay. So you can see how that trails off very quickly. Now here's something that is extremely important that I want to stress, because this next stat is something that I still see bands mess this up. I went to a show with a friend on Saturday, and my friend bought a shirt from one of the local bands and pulled out her credit card, and the guy goes, "Oh, we have PayPal and Venmo. You can scan here," which was fine. She PayPal'd or Venmo'd or whatever. I don't know which one she did. They did have the foresight to have the QR code that you could just scan it there. But this is why this upsets me, because 90%, 90% of sales were on credit cards in 2022. The other 10% were cash. If you are not taking credit cards, which is essentially free, because you can sign up for Square and they will send you the reader. There's no upfront cost. And then they take 3% per transaction. You can build that 3% into your price. Instead of charging $15 for a shirt, charge $20. And guess what? Then your fees are going to be about 60 cents. So you're actually making $4.40 more than you would have if you were pricing $15 for a shirt. Build that in and make the extra money.
This is a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I get it. Venmo doesn't have fees, but here's the catch. Venmo for business does have fees. It's that same 3% fee. And if they catch you using a private personal Venmo account for business transactions, they're going to claw back that money and refund people automatically. I've seen that happen to people. You don't want that to happen. And it's not that these people are like requesting their money back. It's that Venmo's like, oh, this was a business transaction. We're going to give back that money, even if the person doesn't want a refund. Don't risk that. Just pay the 3%.
This is literally so easy to set up. You can set up from start to finish, and you don't even need the card reader because you can manually enter card details on PayPal. PayPal is something like you can use PayPal to accept credit cards. You can manually enter a card number. So even while you're sitting there at the venue doing nothing, you can connect to Wi-Fi, download the app, connect a bank account, and literally take a credit card. It doesn't even take an hour. It's faster than setting up an actual bank account is for you to give your business the ability to accept a credit card. And I think PayPal has some of the highest fees in the industry, but the fact that you can literally on the fly do that, you can start a transaction while they're playing their set. If somebody walks up to you and says, oh, I need to pay with a card, and you're like, I can't accept cards. Well, guess what? Before the set is over, you can actually add an account to your PayPal here. You can get everything going, get all your verification emails good to go, and before the end of that set, accept a credit card payment from that person. Not only is this just like more accessible for the client, which is very important, it's also more secure for you because while cash is absolutely wonderful and a good thing to have, when you swipe a card, 99% of these services deposit that money into your account either that night or the following morning. So you're talking about taking that money and instantly depositing it into your secure account without having to ever go to the bank and make the physical deposits yourself. So this is absolutely huge, especially when you're in a business account, like maybe you have a business card that's tied to your gas and you get rewards on that. Now, instead of having to go to the trouble of waking up in the morning, going and finding whichever branch of bank you have, which mind you, when you're traveling across the country, not all banks exist everywhere. It is very hard to find a Wells Fargo in the Northeast.
Same for Bank of America.
Bank of America, exactly. Chase Bank is one of the few banks that like you can actually find a branch in most states, but even still.
We just got our first one in Vermont.
Yep, see, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, if you don't have these types of things set up, yes, you can obviously still go to the gas station and pay cash for gas. That is totally doable. But guess what? Vans get robbed. The last thing you want is a lockbox full of cash sitting in your van. You're already probably traveling around with your iPods and your MacBooks, obviously all your gear and things like that. The last thing you need to do is incentivize a robber to come in even more with a big old black lockbox full of cash. So accept credit cards. You make more sales. There's so much less friction with people spending a credit card at a merch table than it is cash, because people will look at their wallet and they'll say, oh, I don't have enough cash. People will look at their credit card and just be like, boom, give me 2 shirts. At this point in the game, we have the internet, we have digital global markets, we have instant payments with cards. There's absolutely no reason for any band ever to not be accepting card payments.
100%. And especially when the stats are so much in their favor. And I don't want to harsh on this band because they did have an electronic payment option. They had Venmo. They are far ahead of many others who say cash only. We don't do anything electronic. So shout out to them for at least having that option. But taking cards is so easy. And I do want to point out one thing though, Matt. When you type in a card number manually, this goes for Stripe and Square, and I think also PayPal here, the fee is actually 0.5% higher. So it does cost a little more if you do that. It's worth getting the reader, and they'll send it to you in like a week or 2. But if you do need to take a card payment right now, just eat that 0.5%. If it's a $20 shirt, we're talking about, geez, what's 0.5%? 10 cents. It's 10 cents. Just do it. It does not matter in the big picture.
100%. I mean, it's built into all your rates. So even the people paying cash are mitigating the cost of your fees for the other people that are paying with card. So like in this particular case, 90% of people paid with card. And so with 10% of, let's say you made $2,000 is $200 in cash. If you raised your prices from $15 to $20, then, you know, your 10%, $5 for each of your 10% of clients that all bought that merch with cash, those guys have easily offset all of the extra fees that you have. The most important thing is be able to take a card. There's no excuse. Oh, I don't have a reader. Doesn't matter. Take the card. It's all about making things frictionless. People want to spend money when they're at your merch table. So if you're making it harder on them, you've already lost the battle. They want to come and support you. So Make it possible.
I do want to throw one caveat in there, which is if you're touring into Canada and you're from the US, Square will not allow you to process transactions. So plan ahead and figure out some way that you can make that happen. If you get a Canadian bank account, you can make that happen. So maybe that's hitting up one of the other bands on the bill and saying, hey, are you guys set up with Square? Can we use your Square for this show and you just pay us out in cash? Something like that. Plan ahead and try to figure that out. And if you're big enough that you're touring through Canada consistently, then just make a Canadian bank account and set that up with Square. That's the easiest thing. And I don't know how PayPal here handles this. Maybe they do it a little better. But either way, think of those options ahead of time, because I have been on multiple tours, actually, both Warped Tour and a club tour I was doing where we went into Canada. And I was like, hey, cash only tonight. And to be fair, this was 5, 6, 7 years ago. Wait, 7, 8, 9 years ago. Where cash wasn't as rare. It was like 50-50. Now it's 90-10 for credit cards. So huge difference. And I think we can wrap up that rant. We've been harping on this for at least 10 minutes, but that's how important it is. You need to take cards at your shows for merch. That's just a no-brainer. And we should also mention, At Venue handles payments for you. They might even do the international thing for you. I don't know, because they have their own payment system that's independent of Square. And MerchCat integrates with both Square and PayPal. Whichever app you use, you have options. Now, that said, the average percent of people who buy merch at shows is 20%. That's 1 in 5. That's pretty good. In 2019, it was 11%, so that was 1 in 10. That's a huge difference. That doubled. The show attendance, average show attendance, percentage of fans buying merch, dollars per head, and gross merchandise sales are all up over 40% from 2019. Now, I would argue that if the average show attendance is up over 40%, that just means there are fewer small shows happening or fewer small acts using At Venue. I don't necessarily think that that is a good stat, because I think that means fewer independent artists are touring or fewer independent artists are making enough money to justify the cost of At Venue. They seem to be bragging about that, but I don't think that's good. However, small and mid-cap attendance had the largest growth in percent of fans buying merchandise at 22% in 2022, up from 13% growth in 2019. And small and mid-cap, I believe small cap for At Venue is 500 and mid-cap is 501 to 1,500. That's not bad. Now, looking at show breakdown by attendance grouping, the largest amount of shows happens in the small cap 1 to 500 cap range, which makes sense. 28% of all shows on At Venue are in that 1 to 500. Totally makes sense. There's more small shows than there are arena shows. Arena and amphitheater shows are only like 2.9 plus 1 plus 1. So that's 4.9. Let's call it 5% of all shows are those huge shows. 37% are 501 to 1,500. This is like your medium and smaller large club shows. And then 18% of shows are 1,501 to 3,000. Above that, you get into theaters and arenas and stuff, and that's where it gets lower and lower. But right next to it, there's this very interesting stat of the average per head by attendance grouping, which I just realized, Matt, I've mentioned what per head is on the podcast before, but we didn't explain this today. The per head is just the average amount of money you've collected based on the attendance drop count. So basically, you take all the money you made on merch, this is your gross revenue, and divide it by the number of people who were there. So if you brought in $1,000, let's just keep it simple, and there were 200 people there, that's a $5 per head. You do 1,000 divided by 200, $5 per head. So breaking down the per head by attendance grouping, not a surprise that the average per head for 20,000 plus shows is the highest. It's $10.31. But the second highest is actually in the 1 to 500 range at $9.27 on average. And that's where all your independent artists are going to live. That's the underground that you were mentioning, Matt. That's the punk shows. That's the metal shows. And if you look, the lowest is actually that 3,001 to 5,000 range. So like your theater shows, $7.23 on average. That's pretty bad. Now, to be fair, I did merch for, I'm not going to name them because this is not a number I should probably share publicly. I did merch for a well-known YouTube act last summer, and they were playing a 900 cap room, and the drop was about 460. And the merch table was tucked away in a corner in a very, very bad spot. And our per head was like $2.13. And I felt so bad because I was the seller that night. It was my responsibility to move their merch, and it was just like not moving. So that was the unfortunate thing about that show, is a $2 per head. But seeing some of these numbers where it's like 723 is the lowest per head, I'm just like, oh man, that was really terrible. That was just bad. So I already know next time if I play that venue again, or if I work that venue again, I'm going to print out a giant sign that says merchandise this way. Because literally, like, you went in the front doors, and then the venue doors were there. It's a theater show. And on the way back out, people would just walk out the theater doors 10 feet through the lobby and out the main doors, when I'm like 30 feet to the left, tucked away in a corner. So I need a sign that says, hey, merchandise this way, because no one looked over to their left. Why would people look over to the left? The bathrooms are to the right, so if they're going over that way, they're not walking past me. There's literally nothing. I was in a dead-end corner. I don't think it was my fault that the per head was $2.13 or whatever it was, but now I know for that venue, I'm going to be prepared next time to hopefully get more in line with that $8 per head. And also, since they're a YouTube act, I don't really know how much that lines up, to be fair. That all said, here's where at venue gets a little, shall we say snarky? Matt, I think snarky's the right word.
That's a good term.
At venue is directly calling out the streaming providers because they say streaming versus merchandise. They say an average stream is 0.00318 cents, which that's not necessarily true. That's the Spotify average. If you look at other platforms, the average is higher. Apple pays about twice that, and Napster, ironically, pays like 20 times that or something. I haven't looked at the numbers lately, but it's a lot more. Oh, and here's the other number, is one band tee is $38. I get that that's the average, but to put this into DIY band terms, which I will do in a second, they say it's 11,950 streams equal one band tee. That is being a little optimistic, in my opinion, because they're not factoring in the costs that come with that t-shirt. Now, obviously, you have the sunk costs of writing, recording, releasing your album. But once it's out there, if it's on streaming, you do not have any additional costs except maybe like $20 a year for whatever digital distribution you use. However, with merch, you are going to have a lot of costs for your product. You have to pay for the design. So let's just toss that one aside. The design, that's like the actual cost of recording the album. But then you have a per unit cost for printing and shipping and maybe even storage. Plus, you have those credit card fees. So I think the comparison, to make it more realistic, would be 20 divided by 0.00318. And that would be 6,289 streams to equal the revenue of a $20 shirt. But let's say it costs you $10 to print and ship it. Well, now you're looking at $10, and it's only going to take you 3,144 streams to equal that. That's still a huge amount of streams. Don't get me wrong. But that's about a quarter of what at venue is saying equals a shirt sale. So I think that number, even though I agree with the point behind it, I think that number is inflated. And I'm sure they're just trying to make the point of artists need to sell merch, which I fully agree with. They also say that the average yearly streaming revenue based on Spotify published metrics is $625. That's a week's worth of minimum wage if you're working a full-time job. Like Vermont minimum wage, I think, is $13 right now. That comes out to $520. So that's not a huge difference. And if you're like a 4-piece band, you're splitting that 4 ways. That's like what, 155?
Here's your $160. Yeah.
That's brutal.
Here's your phone bill.
Yeah. But then at venue goes on to say that the average nightly merch revenue from a single show below 1,500 caps, so we're talking about those small and mid-cap venues, is 5,527. Now, again, I love that stat, but that's your revenue. Cut that in half. You're looking at $2,750 or so. And that's assuming there's no hall fee, which I've been called out. A bunch of people are like, what's a hall fee? I don't know what a hall fee is. It's a merch cut. I learned hall fee. That's what they used to call it. That's what they still call it in the UK. I'm going to call it a hall fee. You could call it a merch cut. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter.
It's a merch rate. See this tattoo that says, "What's the rate today?"
Oh, man. You did not.
I absolutely did. and it has a picture of a t-shirt and it says, "What's the rate today?" Because that is the question that every merch guy asks every other merch guy 50,000 times while you are keeping your numbers, doing your inventory, and settling up at the end of the night, or like throughout the course of the day. "Hey, do you know what the rate is today? Do you know what the rate is? What's the rate today?" And for those of you who don't know what a merch rate is, that is the cut that the venue takes to compensate for things like taxes, as well as that's part of their bottom dollar. They take 15% from every artist that plays, if that's the rate. Some people have higher rates, some people have lower rates, some people don't have rates, some people have catastrophic rates. And it's really easy for you to tell which venues and promoters you want to end up working with more, because the higher the rate, the less money you're making. That can be really brutal, especially if you're depending on your merch sales, which if you're touring, you are. So, and you're already like paying 15% to a manager, 15% to a booking agent. Maybe you're paying flat rates to promotion companies. Then you have your gas. So that's why James cut that number straight in half. And even that is like being kind of conservative. I would cut the number down by 2/3.
I would cut it in half if there's no hall fee. And I should also point out that show I worked for the YouTube band this summer, total pro act. And I asked their tour manager what the hall fee is, and she immediately knew what I was talking about. She's like, "Oh, let me look it up." But that said, there are a few tricks that you can do to reduce that hall fee. First of all, always try to get it specified that the hall fee is to be calculated on your net. So after your cost of goods sold and after your costs of, if you have a seller, their pay for the night goes out. If you have credit card fees, you deduct 5%. That's a standard accepted rate. That's what the box office is going to charge you, even though it's really only 2.9% most of the time. So just take out 5% for that, and then calculate that hall fee based on your net profit rather than your revenue. Because if you base it on your revenue, you might actually take a loss because of the hall fee. Whereas if you base it on your net profit, and your net profit was $10, but you brought in, let's say, 100, well, okay, so 100, you'd be paying them $15, you'd be $5 in the hole. But based on your net profit of 10, you pay them $1.50. If it's not specified, base it on that and deal with any fallout later. Otherwise, try to get it in your contract specified that it is 15% net. Here's the other secret that too many bands don't know. If it's not in the contract, you don't have to pay it when the person from the venue shows up and says, "I'm here to collect the hall fee." You say, "What hall fee? Let me get the tour manager. Look, there's no hall fee in the contract. We're not obligated to pay this." And if they say, "Well, but you sold," say, "Right, we weren't made aware of these terms in advance. We do not have to pay this."
The additional way that you can circumvent that is by having a contract with the headlining band rather than with the venues. And then the headliner will have to pay the merch rate, but you will not. This is a lot of the case. Like if you do a buy-on for a tour, those are definitely stipulations that you can negotiate with the band because you're already paying an upfront cost in order to be on the tour. Whereas the headliner may have already booked this tour and they have a 15% merch rate at all these different venues, but you worked directly with the headliner. If it's not in your contract with them, then you don't have to pay the merch rate either. You might actually be on a bill of 5 bands and might be the only band that doesn't actually pay a merch rate because, you had to pay $1,500 to be on the tour or whatever. So essentially you paid your entire merch rate up front, but it does make it a little bit easier for you to deal with concrete figures rather than having to say like, "Oh, did we sell enough merch today to feed ourselves?" There's less moving parts, and so it can really make things easier.
Yeah, I like that tip a lot. And one thing I should say is that when you say this, say it in a nice way. Don't just say, "Oh, we're not paying that. We didn't sign that." Be like, "Hey, like, I'm really sorry. I didn't see that in our contract. Can you help me find that?" And then if they don't have the contract, you just say, "Oh, okay. Well, if you don't have the contract, then I'll pull it up. But I didn't see it in here. If it's not in the contract, we never agreed to it." And even if they tell you at the start of the show, "Hey, it's going to be this rate," you can just tell them straight up, "Ben, actually, that's not in our contract. So just a heads up now, we're not going to be paying that. You can talk to your managers or the promoter, whoever, but we're not paying that unless you can show us where that is in the contract." You don't want to blindside them with that at the end of the night because then they're going to be pissed. Like if you agree at the start of the night and then when they come back, you say, "Oh, yeah, by the way, nope, we're not doing that."
Yep. If you've bought onto a tour, you can literally just respectfully tell them, "We don't have a contract with you," because you don't. You have a contract with the headlining band who has a contract with them. Now, that being said, if they're going to be causing all sorts of strife in your life, it might just be best to bite the bullet and pay somebody whatever their measly merch rate is. And, if you're a little tiny band and it's like you sold 4 shirts and they want to take 10% of your money, it's like, okay, fine, here's my $4. Be sure to like pick and choose your battles. But the music industry is a dog eat dog world, and the contract world is a dog eat dog world, and the freelance world is a dog eat dog world. And playing shows when you're a buy on artist around the globe, that is a convergence of those three things. So you kind of have to have some stones in order to say like, oh, I'm sorry, but like we actually don't have a contract with you. And you'll meet guys and girls that will fight against you, and you'll meet people who are like, okay, cool. Yeah, man. No worries at all. Thanks so much. You got to approach every situation with patience and inner peace, because sometimes it can be frustrating. Sometimes venues will literally have some secret person watching you sell merch, and they will literally make tally marks about all the items that you make. I remember playing Kansas one time, and this lady came up to me and told me all the merch that I sold. And my response to her was, how much did I sell it for? Because they're taking a percentage of my sales. And she didn't know what to say. And I said, look, I'm more than happy to work with you, but I mean, I literally have a $5 bin out here and I have $50 hoodies. So you can't just come up and say that I sold 30 items, because 10% on $5 is 50 cents and 10% on $50 is $5. So, I mean, you're talking about a 90% difference in price increase. And people will try to swindle you. Some people aren't trying to swindle you. They are just clueless. Playing Las Vegas is one of the worst things ever, because you have to like do count ins and count outs, and like it's a giant headache. But the merch front and the merch rate can definitely be things that are super frustrating. And if you're not mentally prepared for that expense at the end, it can be something that comes along and sweeps all your profit out from under you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best thing that I can say for this is have a spreadsheet that automates all of this, so you can just put in your numbers at the end of the night and be like, yep, that's the cut. You know, that's our profit, our revenue, our gross, our net. And really, I think one last thing that I just want to touch on before we move on from haul fees and merch rates, Matt, is you mentioned sometimes it's just worth saying, you know what, here you go. If somebody's trying to say, hey, 30%, and they're really adamant about it, just say, hey, we'll meet you in the middle and do 30% of net. If they want 30% of your revenue, make that compromise. And you can say, look, take it or leave it. We're going to walk away now, or we'll give you 30% of net. We're not going to give you 30% of revenue, because then we're actually in the hole tonight. We're really sorry we did not make that much. And we're not at a price point where we can take a 30% hit and still stay in the black and get to the next city. But if you're not going to leave us alone about this, we'll give you 30% of net right now, and we'll never come back. Simple as that. Now, this is where it gets interesting. And Matt, I remember we did an episode about merch way back in 2020. I can't remember if it was you or Aaron, but the percentage of total gross merch sales from the top 3 items out of the whole line is 61%. And 41% of shows have 15 or more items. So you're loading in 15 plus items, and 3 of them outsell everything else 61% to 39%. Woo! Bring less stuff.
Yep. Trim it. You don't need to have a boutique. You need to have 3 to 5 things that sell well.
And getting into that, I'm going to skip here. They have the top markets, which Phoenix is number 1. Vegas is number 13. We'll skip that for now. But the top selling items of 2022, and 51% of all items sold at shows are t-shirts. What a surprise. Shocker. Who would have thought? $38 on average. That's high, but fine. Number 2, coming in at 5%. We're talking literally a tenth. We've reduced tenfold from first place to second place. Is the hat, $35. Number 3 at 4%, so only 1% reduction, is the pullover hoodie. And then we go on to a long sleeve shirt, a koozie, a sweatshirt, a poster, a tote bag, a CD, and stickers. Now, the average price for CDs that I'm seeing here is $29. That's actually also really high.
My guess is that they're compiling CDs with vinyl.
That's possible. Yeah, because vinyl outsells CDs typically. Now, let's go back to those t-shirts, though, because remember, 51% of all items sold at shows are t-shirts. The top color of t-shirts is the black t-shirt at 53%. So literally, over half of all those items sold are t-shirts, and over half of all t-shirts sold are black. That means 25% of all items sold are black t-shirts across the industry. Second place on t-shirts is white at 8%. When you're looking at the colors, it's 53% are black, 8% are white, 6% are tan, 4% tie-dye, which that's kind of cool, 3% blue, which they've put in red on the report for some reason, 3% gray, and 23% are all other colors. Why did they make blue red on the highlight? Like the others, like tan is tan and tie-dye is gray, which you can't really make a tie-dye icon. But my point here is, if you want to sell merch, have at least one black t-shirt. If you only have one shirt design, it better be black. If you have 2, at least one of them needs to be black. that will by far outsell whatever else you have. Now, trends that at Venue is expecting to continue in 2023 is cashless payments and credit cards. We talked about that. We've beat, I don't know, what's the vegan equivalent of a dead horse?
Eating a dead cabbage.
We're kicking a dead cabbage. I like it. Tipping. Tip amounts are up and more artists, venues, and festivals are accepting them. I do not necessarily agree with that out of my own experience because I did not get a single tip at that show I worked over summer. But again, our per head was $2.13 or something, so that was a weird show in general. Because it was a YouTube show, it wasn't really people who go to shows often, so that might be part of it. Here's something to contradict what we were just saying, though, which is more colorful merch. Although black is half of all t-shirts sold, more colors are popping up. So I think that's kind of cool, but we're still talking over 53%.
They're not going to sit idly, but if you were to like place a merch order, maybe you don't want to place an order for 100 tie-dye shirts. Get 100 black shirts and get 12 tie-dye shirts. There's ways that you can divvy up your print and whatnot. It's not to shy you away from having them, because some people really do like colors. And generally the people who like colors like a really boisterous color in general. It's stark and it draws attention to it, and it's something that's a little bit unique and has a little bit of personality. So like you can definitely have some colorful pieces in there, but 26% of all sales at a show are black t-shirts.
That's across all genres too. So if you're like a punk band or a metal band, it's probably going to be more like 60% of all sales are black t-shirts.
Let's say a little, blonde-haired white girl going to a country concert is buying these black t-shirts. Like, probably not. They're buying the bedazzled, fun Kenny Chesney shirts. Like you were saying, if this actually was a breakdown between different genres, I completely agree. Hardcore, metal, punk rock, all of the underground scenes are going to show. I wouldn't be surprised if that figure doubled.
Easily. And I have two little examples about that. One, I actually worked a Tim McGraw show on the way to Alaska last summer. It was literally on the way to the airport. So I was like, oh, I'll work a Tim McGraw show in Hartford, Connecticut. Now I can write this off as a business expense, this portion of the trip. And what you're saying, Matt, is absolutely right. Like, most of the women were wearing white or like blue jean vests or something like that. But a lot of the guys did have black Tim McGraw shirts. So you might want to divide that up too. And at the merch booth have like men's shirts in black and women's shirts in white. And like, I'm not saying make it everything black and white like that, but if you're going to have options, have those options available. It all depends on your genre. And the second thing is that how you dress really makes a difference. When I went to that show that I was mentioning the other night, I went up to the box office and the venue has 2 rooms. And I said, oh yeah, 1 ticket for tonight. And then after about 10 seconds, the lady was like looking in the computer, said, oh yeah, which by the way, like in the small room, I'm not sure if there's a show in the big room tonight. She goes, oh yeah, there is, but it's sold out. So I knew which one you were talking about. Plus, you don't look like you would fit in with that crowd anyway. I was like, oh really? What's in there? She's like, oh, it's some like DJ night or something. Like, oh yeah, that's definitely the punk show is me. And there I am, like all dressed in black. I had my Bernie Sanders shirt on, skinny jeans, like a black jacket, keys hanging off a carabiner. It's like, oh, totally, I'm going to the DJ night. Like, no. Our last thing to touch on here, though, Matt, is something that we already mentioned. This is another trend that at Venue expects in 2023 is smaller product lines. We were already saying, don't bring 15 plus things. You don't need that. If 61% of sales come from your top 3 items, at Venue is seeing that the top grossing genres are reducing their product lines and seeing a 13% higher average gross sales per show. So what you're doing here is you're cutting down on overwhelm. Because if you have 15 items, people are like, I don't know which one I want to buy. I have $50. A shirt is 40, so I can only get one. There's so many. I don't know. I'm just going to go buy something online later. But if you have 3 shirts or even 2 shirts, a hoodie, a hat, and then your records, which, to be fair, at Venue might be counting individual CDs as different items, like if you have 10 different CDs. But all that aside, if you reduce the amount of choices people have to make, you will sell more. I've seen this where a band has like 8 different shirt designs. I literally look at that, I'm like, I don't know which one I want. I can't decide on the spot, so I'm not going to buy anything. A band has 3 designs. I go, I want that one. It's as simple as that. You are literally adding friction to that transaction by having too many options and overwhelming your customers. I was talking about this before the episode, Matt, with the restaurants. You go to, let's say, Burger King. They have like 15 things on the menu maybe, and you can get them in different combinations. That's it. If you're going to Burger King, you look at the thing, you're like, that looks good, that's what I want. Now, I go there, I get the fries because they're vegan. McDonald's fries are vegan. So that's like all I eat at Burger King, which I don't do often, but on the road, it's useful. If I go to like this amazing vegan restaurant, I just end up ordering the same thing every single time because they have like 30 options. And I love Nourish. They're an amazing restaurant, but they have so many options that the first time I didn't know what to get and I just picked something and I stuck with that. I get that every single time. And I've dabbled in a few other things. But for the most part, I go back and I get the poutine because I know it's good. And to try everything, I would literally have to go another 20 or 30 times. So I keep it simple and I go with what I know. If I'm looking at that merch table and there's 30 different items, I'm probably going to say, I don't need that. I already saw the show. I can buy something online when I have more time to think about it. So I'm not going to buy tonight. That does it for this episode of the Band Hive podcast. Thank you so much for tuning and listening. I really appreciate it. And I hope that this insight into the 2022 at Venue merch report has given you some interesting and inspiring thoughts onto what you can do for your band to sell more merch in 2023 and beyond. Now, some of the things we harped on were really things that every artist needs to do, while other things are just general things to keep in mind that you can take inspiration from and go out there and try your own thing. You don't have to do everything the way we say to do it. Just make sure that you do the things that are essential. Having a credit card reader, that is not an option. Or having at least one black t-shirt, that is such a no-brainer. So some of those things you should absolutely do. Other things say, hey, you know what? Maybe I want to sell a blue shirt. Now that I know 3% of all t-shirts sold are blue, like I can give it a shot, but I'm not going to print as many of them as I would the black shirts. Whatever it is, be open to trying new things, but also make sure that you have the core elements of your merch empire in place. And I do say merch empire because this is where your money is going to be coming from. So be sure to stay on top of that. We'll be back right here in your favorite podcasting app next Tuesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Until then, I hope you have a great week. Stay safe. And of course, as always, keep rocking.
Every day is matching flannel day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, we did it again. Sick.
That's right.
I think you're wearing a different one, aren't you?
Yes, this one is actually my wife's.
Ooh, spiffy. Are the buttons on the wrong side?
Actually not. It's still a guy's shirt that she wears, but it's like a thinner, softer material. So it's like not like a thick flannel. It's almost like a polyester blend. It's kind of silky and feels good on my body.
That is nice. Yeah, so this actually lives on the chair I'm sitting on. Like, if I'm not recording, it's just on that chair constantly because TMI, I get sweaty when I'm recording.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm just like, okay. And I realized this color goes well with TikTok. The TikTok clips I do in this flannel do better than if I'm wearing like yellow or blue or purple or whatever. But yeah, I think like the red one, and I have like a black and gray fade flannel where it's not like just checkers, it's like fading. I think those two are my favorite. And I have a nice yellow one that's a little thicker. Oh, I have a green one too. I have too many flannels to pick. Hey, that's a merch idea. Flannel shirts with a print on the back. But the top selling items of 2022. And this is where I love to nerd out about because it's about, God damn it. Again, I'm not wearing a black shirt. This is like a navy blue. And anytime I talk about why you need to sell a black t-shirt, because I almost always wear black t-shirts, I'm not wearing a black t-shirt. Last time it was gray, and this one's like navy blue. Is that also like a blue?
No, this is black.
Oh, that's black. Okay. See, it looks like the same because the lighting on me, it's like it looks black, but it's a dark. It's not even dark anymore. It's bleached by the sun. # thanks, Warped Tour. Rocket Shop is up. Blah. They said it's a mess, dude. I'm sorry. Rocket Shop is up next with some great... Man,